It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did, and now I'm the voice for recovery.
It's Jeff Breedlove with the American Addiction Recovery Association. You are listening to Real Talk about addiction and recovery, eliminating the whisper. And I have with me my partner, the president of AARA, Coach Scott Cochran. How you doing, Coach?
Fantastic, man. I'm excited today, baby. I'm excited today. I got my good friend Ben Newman with us today. We heard about Ben Newman at Alabama. I don't even know how many years ago it was, but when we were first at Bama, first 5 years, and we had to get him over and just meet the team. We had to get him over and talk to the teams.
Ask yourself right now, what's holding you back?
What holds you back? What holds you back? Were you a better man today than you were yesterday? Did you give more today than you did yesterday?
Some of y'all, you got it in your DNA. You just been quick your whole life. You fast. Some of y'all think y'all beasts, and you're not a beast, you just a winner.
There's a difference between saying beast mode and activating beast mode. Think about that. There's a difference between saying beast mode and making the choice on a daily basis, one day at a time, 6 seconds of play, one rep at a time to activate beast mode. There's a difference.
Your talent is actually your vulnerability. You're a Bama ball player.
Edit your life. What's most important to you? When you do that exercise with yourself, things become clear rather quickly. If you want to play at an excellent level, if you want to do something excellent, you have to be excellent all the time. It's a way of life. It's not just I show up on Monday and be excellent. No, it don't work that way. Right? You gotta be excellent across the board. Right? And that's how you build habits. When excellence becomes a habit, then that's just who you are.
Man, Ben, thank you for coming on today, brother.
Cochran, I would do anything for you. It is family, which I'm sure will come out a little bit in the interview. And sometimes people just continue to question, how did you guys build those relationships at Alabama? So great to be with you, Jeff. Great to be with you. And I believe so much in your work, which I know is going to come out in our time together today.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ben.
For sure. Super fired up. Now, I'm going to jump right into it because you know me well. I'm going to jump right into it. We've had quite a few people on this podcast. None at your, I would say, that I could compare to you. Because how many books have you written?
I've written 8.
8. I was going to say 9. So I'm glad I didn't say it on my own.
Hey, wait a minute, Coach.
The 9th is in process.
Yeah.
Coach, wait just a minute. I'm talking to a guy that's got 8 books that he's authored and a guy that's got 8 national championship football rings.
Come on, baby.
That's all right there.
Come on, baby. Come on. Now, listen, I hope that today we're going to save 8 lives. How about that? How about that? Let's keep that in mind, right? And I'm bringing that up, and we're going to talk about the 9th book too, for sure. But I'm bringing that up because this is going to be a side of Ben that I don't know is out there. We're going to talk about some different stuff. This is not a motivation or inspiration type interview. This is real talk about addiction and recovery. And I don't want to take any more of this space. I'd love for us to hear your story and about, what you dealt with growing up. So I'm going to hand it off to you, brother.
When you reached out for the opportunity to spend this time together, and quite frankly, when you reached out, when you shared, which was no surprise to me, your passion for what AAR is now doing at a very high level, very fast, because you don't do things slow. I knew the impact would be great. I knew the team you put together would be incredible. And I was willing to commit in any way that I could to help you do this because of my story. And many people know my story, but you asked, and I will deliver sharing it in a different way today so that we can create impact and save those 8+ lives tonight. Many people know, and I'm an emotional dude. I cry when I watch Extreme Home Makeovers, and Cochran knows that about me. Sometimes Cochran will be like, bro, but he knows I'm emotional. But I lost my mom 11 days before my 8th birthday, and she is the toughest champion of life I've ever known. And many people have heard me share my mother's story and her fight with amyloidosis and coming to the dinner table with an IV stand and 24-hour nursing care in the house. But my mom was divorced when I was 6 months old, and my mom divorced my father. My dad was a drug addict, alcoholic, manic depressive, bipolar, everything under the sun. And my mom had to make a strong and courageous decision with 2 young boys to say, enough is enough. I cannot do this. That is something that has been written about in my mother's journal. It's a journal that I keep dear to my heart. I've written books about. There's words where, as my mother was going through her battle with amyloidosis, knowing that there was no cure, and there's still no cure today. So we all know my mom passed 11 days before my 8th birthday, and my father moved back into the house. My mother would journal, how could Bert possibly take care of these 2 boys? And my father moved back into the house, and he was a drug addict and an alcoholic. So here I am, 11 days before my 8th birthday. Mom dies. What was once a TV room became her hospital, is now converted back to a TV room and a bedroom where my father, who is an abuser of drugs and alcohol, moves back into the house. So now, fast forward just a couple of weeks, I'm an 8-year-old boy. My dad's back in the house. I'm coming home from school to a father who's high on drugs or drunk on the couch every single night. And this was my reality by 8 years old. And so I was able to learn, I'll spin it back to you and we can go back and forth, but I was able to learn very quickly the impact that drugs and alcohol has on very young children, right? It impacts many people that are adults, children, your own children. And it hit me so hard as an 8-year-old boy, not understanding what's going on, because you don't understand. And you think dad's just tired from work. And really, even to this day, there's, questions that I have that will forever go unanswered. But it was painful for my mom. I'm grateful for her strength. I don't know what would have happened in our home had he been there. Luckily, I will say, and we'll get into all of this because I think it's important for addicts to know that you can recover from one thing, but addiction can show up in other areas of your life, which I think is important for us to address. That my father did get sober 9 months after my mother died.
Wow.
However, he did so that the drugs and alcohol stopped, but, manic depressive, bipolar, some of the violent words that he would use still showed up. And then there was addictive behavior, which we'll get into all of that showed up his entire life. I don't know if it ever left him. I think there were small windows. Some were long windows, but it never really left him, and it showed up in every area of addiction.
So you're 8 years old. Huge hit, right? Huge hit with mom. Huge blow in life, right? Now I know you've done a lot of work on this. But do you remember dad coming in the house and there being like some relief, like, oh, at least I get dad back?
I mean, I wish I could say that I felt that. Nobody's ever asked me that. I don't think I ever felt that. Unfortunately, I think as a young kid or even as an adult, I mean, I can look back. It would have been great to feel that. Scott, nobody's ever asked me. I never felt that, and I don't know if that was maybe because my memories aren't of that. My memories are, we had this is where my mind always goes. And I think this is because when my dad did finally go to AA, I would have to go to Al-Anon meetings, right? So they would have me go. And so Al-Anon, for those that may not know, Al-Anon is for the children of addicts. So they would have, my dad would go to the AA meetings, and then we would go to the Al-Anon meetings. And so you'd go and you'd express it. For some reason, the one story that always came out is we had one of those old school meat lockers, like meat refrigerators in our house. It was wooden, and it was one of those deals back in the day, like, I think you put salt or something in it, and that's how they would like preserve meats and things. It would like literally go in there. But what was in there for my dad was a vat of vodka that was like this. And so I remember as an 8-year-old boy, my dad's cup of coffee, my dad's orange juice. I mean, those things would literally go from the kitchen to that old refrigerator, that antique refrigerator, which was in the living room where the TV was. And both cups would go on top. The vodka would come out, and he would pour it into both. And he didn't tell me this until I was an adult. to kind of fill in the gaps of what I didn't understand what was actually happening. But my father was drinking 1 to 2/5 of alcohol a day. And fully functioning as an attorney. And here's what's wild. My dad was a wildly successful, prominent trial attorney who, even like when he was an adult, he would literally, when he would tell me like, okay, now you're old enough to hear some of this stuff. He said, to this day, I have no idea how I was even able to function. I mean, he would literally go to the office drunk and then drink throughout the day. Those, unfortunately, those are the memories that I have, not gratefulness as a young boy that dad's here to save me because mom's there. And then you throw in the verbal abuse. It was probably the opposite, which we can get into. There's a powerful lesson I want to share towards the end. We'll keep people hanging here. But something that I've now learned that I have to do every day, that I journal to myself about the strength of the little boy that's still in me. And we'll talk about that later, but it's almost like I'm still recovering from what I endured growing up, which I think for many of us is something we never get to, but it's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, this thing takes hostages. When I was in heavy addiction, I would always say to myself, no one cares. I make a lot of money. I'm winning championships. No one cares. If I have to do this to perform, because in my sick, twisted mind, I thought I needed it just to perform, that without it, I couldn't be the best version of me. Right. Which was the complete opposite. It's like the lies we tell ourselves, and it's 100% the lies we tell ourselves. But you got me intrigued. I don't know if I can wait much longer. What is this that you do on a daily basis to tell yourself? I mean, this is so big because we all have our ways, right? Like I have my goals and I'm very open about what I do with my goals, but I'd really want to hear about this.
There's only one other time I've really spoken of this, and it was an event that I did at a boot camp that we had last year in Puerto Rico. And one thing I got to take a little jab at Cochran. I'm so happy this new job at West Alabama, but he was supposed to speak at boot camp this year, and now we're gonna have to make up for it somewhere else because his schedule's a little tighter than it was when we had that conversation. So I needed to at least say that to get me to laugh before I get emotional.
Yeah, I owe you. I got you. I owe you.
So last year we had a boot camp, and dear friends of mine, Tim Grover and Phil Heath, we blacked out. We blacked out this room. So imagine we had 150 people that came to this boot camp. We had 30 individuals that stayed for an extra day to just spend time with Phil Heath, Tim Grover, and myself, who, have had a history of understanding the mindset and performance. And so we literally had everybody come in, 30 people. The room was completely pitch black. Literally, it was like set up like a movie theater. You had to have flashlights bring you to your seats. And it was the first time that I ever shared what I'm about to share. I won't go as deep as I did that day for those that were there, but I went to the back of a journal that I write in every single day. And I realized that after I read 2 books, one called Protect Your Peace by a dear friend of mine, Trent Shelton, and a book called Worthy by a dear friend of mine, Jamie Kern-Lima, which she wrote the book for women. I'm telling you, this book's for anybody. I mean, it's an amazing book. And so now if you guys can picture this, at the top of this journal, in the back pages, it says, protect your peace, and then it says, I am worthy. And I write that at the top of every page. So when I'm done filling a page, I'll write that up to kind of start the page anew. And every day now I surrender to God for the strength that he has given me to be able to continue to walk the path that I'm on. Because when people hear the type of pain I had to endure losing my mom and my dad, had I turned to a life of drugs and alcohol, people would have said, oh yeah, Ben Newman, that guy had a great kid, great potential. But we understand that he did that. That's the way his dad was. And I think we all need to know, those that are listening, that are children who have pain, you can break the cycle if you allow yourself to be loved. And so I had coaches and my grandparents and all these people who surfaced in my life, and they were able to almost protect me. But as much as those people were there to protect me, I would still question, even if Cochran and I are winning championships together, and I'm winning championships with NFL players and all these things, or championships in boardrooms in my corporate work, I woke up so many days not feeling worthy because my dad's words were so heavy, the way that he abused me verbally because of his addiction. His fight and his nastiness would come out because he couldn't have the things that his body was craving. I mean, it's vicious. And so I'd never heard it that way, Coach Cochran, the hostage. I was like a hostage to him my entire life. And until my father died, I wasn't able to walk through these proverbial gates every day, lock those gates up and say, man, I'm only bringing the people who love me. Like, even though Coach Cochran and I don't get to spend as much time as we did back in the day, like, I know I'm a phone call away from the love I need because he'll go through those gates with me. So I bring the people that I want. But one of the most important things is I now have to write in this journal to the little boy inside me. And I thank God and I surrender every day for the strength and love of the little boy that's inside of me. So rather than trying to flee that little boy, I actually step into the darkness every day of the pain and challenge that I've been through. And I surrender and I thank God for giving me the strength of that little boy being the one with my mom and with God to help me understand that I can endure and I can persevere. And so it's a dark place that I go to, but sometimes I think when people hear the word darkness, especially when Grover likes to talk about it, they don't understand the power and strength we can actually find in that darkness, and they don't know how to separate it.
Now we talking, now we cooking with something. Okay? You know, I like that you say that, because when I do my meditation, you know, I do a daily meditation, and I think about it like this. I'm about to visit with my creator, right? I'm about to give these next 5 minutes totally to him. You know, in my world, it's Jesus Christ, right? I'm about to give these next 5 minutes to him. So how am I going to prepare for that? What am I going to do? Like, I don't lay in bed for my meditation. I have a chair in the dorm, because I live in a dorm right now, but I have a chair, and I guess I go to a kind of a dark place. I almost think of it like, if you ever get underneath a heavy bench press, right? Like, if you ever like get in your mind, like, you got to get your mind right, you know? And so I'm about to have this conversation with God. So I got to mentally prepare for that. I don't do it kind of casually. There are times for that. I definitely listen to the rosary every day, where it's very casual. Do it most of the time when I'm driving and stuff. But yeah, that dark place is really important. And I like how you're using it in this stance. Okay, so we know this about you. What about what you've been through has made you the man you are today?
Oh,
Yeah, baby. Yeah. You know, I wasn't going to throw little softballs at you. Come on. You know me. You know me.
you know, as I continue to go deeper, and this is just a reflection of sharing, because I'm willing to go there with Jeff and Scott because of my relationship with Scott and my belief in what they're doing. I think the greatest strength, without a doubt, has been the pain that I've had to go through. I mean, I remember being a little boy. My dad would verbally abuse me to the point where he would call me different names, and I was actually very heavy. So now people are like, man, like, you're like addicted to working out. I'm like, you know, I'm addicted to working out and buying Air Jordans. That's a hell of a lot better than other addictions that I could have. So It's like, hey, like, if I'm buying shoes and working out, but a lot of the working out came from, I was very heavy as a young boy. So my dad would verbally abuse me with his words. Once again, my understanding of people now through my work, I think he was trying to find ways to make himself feel better because of the restriction he had, because of the disease that he battled every day. And I recognize it was a disease. I don't think any father wakes up wanting to do the things my father did to me, but that was my reality. And he also had choices to get better in all areas, and some of them he chose and others he didn't. And that brought pain into my life. And I remember my dad, he would call me all these names, and I was maybe 9 years old at the time, probably 9. And I remember I kept a list of all the names. I mean, these are curse words. This is everything. And I'm talking, my dad was so nasty to me with his words. I really wish he would have just punched me in the face, because had he punched me in the face, it would have hurt and the wounds would have gone away. But I was on my dad's deathbed the day before he died, feeding him breakfast, still seeking his approval because of the wounds of the pain that he delivered to me because of his addiction and his disease. And so all of these words he would write, I remember there was this one day, I'd write them down and I put them in my desk drawer. And finally, he's just verbally berating me. And I always joke, I've got these veins that pop out of my neck, but that's my passion you feel. When my dad's veins popped out of his neck, you were like, man, you got to get out of there. You need to save yourself. You got to run because there's bad things coming. And his face would go totally red and into this nasty, violent place. And I went and I grabbed this list and I just handed it to him. Guys, I'm a little boy in my home. This is 2 doors down from where my mom used to come out, this strong, powerful woman. And now I'm standing here and I gave him the list. I'm like, these are all the names you call me. And I never thought of it this way until this moment. You know, I wonder, and I'm just speaking out loud here, working through this with you guys to help people that are listening. It was almost like that was me as the little boy that I referred to, that I write to now, like trying to say, hey, like, man, somebody help me because this ain't right. And what came after that was a wrath that was so nasty. I never tried again to stand up for myself, to say, hey, you call me this or you call me that, because I was like, there's nothing I can do. You're a big man. I'm a little boy. What am I to do? I tried to tell you and you beat me down worse. And so that, I mean, you talk about defining moments and tough things you've been through. I mean, that right there, as we're having a conversation, might be the reason why I was never able to break through. It could have been that moment and others. And so what happened, and it's been a double-edged sword in my life. Nothing was ever good enough for my father. The verbal abuse, but I'll tell you what, it's made me the man that I am today. Because I look back and I oftentimes say to myself, if I had to endure this to help others understand, to connect to the pain or to fight for themselves, then it was worth it. As hard as that sounds, if I had to endure this to help the young men that we're blessed to help on a football team, to help the young women on a college basketball team or on an NBA team or in a corporation, leaders, then so be it. Because as much as I would give anything to have one more hug and kiss from my mom, the way she used to tuck me in at night to bring my mom back, I don't know if I would be the man that I am today. And God made me go through what I've been through in order to learn what it means to persevere, become resilient, and endure. And gosh, man, you guys are making me emotional tonight.
Ben, let me say, first, let me say to listeners that you're listening to Real Talk about addiction and recovery, and you're hearing Real Talk. Eliminating the Whisper with AARA, the American Addiction Recovery Association, Coach Scott Cochran and Jeff Breedlove with our guest, Ben Newman. Ben, I didn't know the direction where we're going to go with this, and I don't know your story, and I relate to it, and I want to share a minute and then ask you a question. So, you know, when I was 50 years old, I was in a treatment center. I'd been arrested. I was facing a felony. It was very public arrest. It had made the news, and where I went to get treatment, they asked them. It was all men. They asked the men to tell their life stories. And I had 2 roommates, you're in a roommate setting, that said, you know, you should really take this seriously. And I kind of did. And we had to write it, handwriting. There was no, couldn't type it on a keyboard. And I wrote about the trauma. You're supposed to write about the trauma in your life. And I did. And the trauma in my life involved my father and myself. Now, he was an alcoholic or anything like that, but it was a situation between him and myself, and he had sort of emotionally taken himself away from me, and for a couple of years we didn't talk, and I was a kid too, and you know, I sort of identified that as part of the trauma that led me down a path of pain and stuff to want to escape through addiction. And so they make you tell this story, and I had bottled it up, right? I was 50 years old. I bottled up all my high school. By the way, it at its core was football. Literally, the core was I wasn't half bad at football, and I quit playing football. And he thought I was going to play for Georgia and Vince Dooley, and there was a possibility I might have, but I did not. And so there I am. I share in this circle of men for the first time in my life all these feelings that I have, and there it is. And that was hard to do. 3 days later, and of course, what happens right then is the place I was at, Mar says, oh, we'll have the family counselor talk to your dad and your mom. We'll talk to your dad, though, and we'll get you and your dad reconciled. And that's what a family staff person does. I'm not in recovery yet. And I'm like, okay, sure. That sounds great. Whatever. Well, 3 days later, they pulled me out of a meeting, and they just don't do that. And I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And they took me down to the director of the men's program's office, and he told me that my father had just suffered a heart attack and was on life support and wasn't going to die. Well, God has a sense of humor. One of those roommates I referenced is a cardiologist. We go out to the hospital. I never spoke to my dad in a two-way conversation again. Dr. Mike, our brother in recovery, my brother in recovery, kept saying, he can hear you. He can hear you. My wife and mom were like, talk to your dad. So I have this one-sided conversation at 50 years old. The last time my father saw me alive was the dinner the night before I checked in to treatment. And he knew his son was facing a felony and had been humiliated in the media. And I never got that closure with my father. And you struck me when you said you were at the bedside with your dad, feeding him, still seeking that approval. And then to complicate it, my 24-year-old son, who's helping run the board for this Zoom, he saw me in active addiction he was a high school student when I was arrested. And I look at it from both the son perspective of the trauma that I faced from my dad that led me to be in active addiction and how I impacted my son as a dad. And I told you all that to tell you this. It's a lot of men I know out there. Yeah, right now we're talking about sons and dads. We are. That's what we're talking about. And that's okay in America to still talk about sons and dads. And I think a lot of men have been through things similar to you and similar to me. What I want to know is kind of how you feel now about how you felt seeking that approval and how you felt as you got to kind of process through him. And what would you say to somebody like me who never had closure with their dad? How are we supposed to feel about dads that we had trauma with?
So I'll first off, Jeff, thank you for sharing that so that you and I can, become closer and, thoughts and prayers for your continued strength every day to be an example for everybody that you're helping now lead with AARA. And, a lot of people hide behind the curtains, right? That's why when Coach Cochran came to me and he started sharing the vision and what he was doing about ending the whisper, it was, no, we're coming out front to let people know that it's okay. If somebody were to listen to the 31 minutes we've already recorded, people would be like, man, people don't talk about this stuff. That's the problem, right? And so to share the story is how we actually work to the solution so that a little boy who is in Al-Anon meetings right now or a little girl can hear this and find a way to fight for your, other parents who are dealing with the same. People just need to know it's okay to talk. It just gets me so excited for what you guys are doing and the path that you're taking. I will, to answer your question, I'm going to go a direction that you may not expect. So a year before I was standing at my dad's deathbed, I was standing at what we thought was his deathbed a year earlier. And I walked in that day and I had told my wife, Amy, I said, I'm walking in and I'm finally going to just say everything that I need to say to get it off my chest. And my entire life with my father was a roller coaster. I mean, there were times where it looked like it was a great relationship. There were times that I'm not proud of. We didn't speak for years. He wasn't in my life when my two children were born. So there's a tremendous amount of pain that we cannot get through in a 1-hour podcast. But I will share with you, I always went back, and I don't know if it was because that was the only parent. That's all I had. Like I needed his approval. I felt like maybe the little boy didn't know where to go, or he was battered so badly that he just wanted to prove I can get this from you, or I need this from you. And so I kept going back, no matter the pain, the crazy stories I could share. And so we're there. It's 1 year before the story that I shared. And I walked in, I told Amy, I got the courage, I'm going to say it. And I stood at the end of his hospital room, oxygen in the nose. I mean, he looked like death. He looked like this was it. And so I said everything I needed to say. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, all I've ever wanted to do was make you proud. And he just stared at me and he said nothing. And I remember I walked out of that hospital room that day and I was like, what in the world? I mean, at the time, I'm a 43-year-old man still seeking my dad's approval. Here I am. I finally build up the courage to ask him. He can't even get the words out of his mouth. And I walked out and I called Amy and I just obviously was emotional. I had some very choice words about how I felt about him. I'm like, how could he not even say it? Like I just said, here, it's on a platter. Could you just say it? And I'd never heard him say it my entire life. And then even that next year, I still went back. And there were all kinds of crazy things that happened in our family with my dad. And it was just awful. Well, now speed forward to where I was giving him that breakfast the day before he died, in between bites of oatmeal and eggs and trying to give him sips of coffee. He looks up at me and he said, "Ben, I'm very proud of you." And I took it in, finished the breakfast with him. And this is the part you're going to be surprised by. I walked out of the hospital room that day. Jeff, Coach Cochran, I felt nothing. I called Amy and I said, he finally said it for the first time in my life. And I don't even think I needed to hear it. And the tough part of that, especially both of you being fathers, right? Can you imagine going back and hearing that the son didn't need it? And so it's almost like he missed his opportunity. And this is where anybody struggling, and like everybody, I've never said this publicly, but it is what it is. And if we're trying to help people, then we got to go all in. The pain, right? He never changed. And so I want to say to everybody out there, I don't know what it feels like to be an addict. I feel, unless I've fought it off, there's probably something in me. But if I've been able to battle it, or it went to another member of the family, or it passed me, I know it's a disease. But I'm going to say this because of what I've experienced as one of those hostages, as Coach Cochran referred to. Don't just find the strength to recover. Lean in completely to understand the pain that you have delivered to somebody. Because had my father tried to mend the pain, rather than continuing this pattern of, I'm just going to keep saying what I want to Ben, abusing. I mean, the level of mental abuse. I mean, he knew how to control me. Had me seeking this approval, rather than we could have had this amazing relationship, and he just apologized for everything and said, let's work on this the right way, rather than a consistent path of manipulation, because he never was able to fight off his demons, because he kept getting addicted to something else. And even when he, towards the end of his life, we ended up finding out he did get addicted to painkillers. He was hiding painkillers. He had friends that were bringing him painkillers. This was an award-winning trial attorney. He didn't lose a trial for 15 straight years. After Johnny Cochran got O.J. Simpson off and he built this big brand, my dad was the attorney who handled all the referrals for Johnny Cochran's cases in the city of St. Louis. Like, my dad did not lose. So you talk about a persuasive guy. This man knew how to manipulate and win. He had friends bringing him essentially drugs. I mean, his friends were his drug dealers bringing him pain pills. So he always fought the addiction rather than going all in with people like you to say, no, I'm done. And I'm going to be as open as I possibly can. And some people are probably thinking, like, how in the world is this guy being this open right now? I told you Coach Cochran was going to get it out of me. But I think if we're ever going to get better, we have to go all in. And I've been to enough therapists. You can call me doctor. You might as well introduce me as Dr. Newman today. Like, I've had so much pain to endure, and I'm still writing to that little boy. I just ask anybody who's coming to AARA for help. Or one thing I love about Coach Cochran, man, he'll send you somewhere else. He doesn't care where you get it from, as long as you say, I'm going to get help. Go all in understanding the pain that you've caused, not just to yourself and to others.
Coach, let me ask him another question and hand it back over to you. So both of you men work with sports teams, and that sounds awesome to people like me. But let me tie it to this disease. So the number one cause of death in the United States of America for Americans 18 to 45 is a combination of overdose and fentanyl poisonings, which are two different things. When I say that to you, Ben, how does that make you feel? And when you're out there with all these young people rising from college into family, into the leaders of business and the workforce in America, how does that make you feel? And how do you talk to young people today, knowing that in their generation, 18 to 45, that's a reality that they're dealing with?
So let me give you another answer that maybe you wouldn't expect, because I think this will hit people powerfully, because you never know the unexpected lessons that come in the unexpected places. And so when Coach Cochran and Ginger Gilmore invited me finally for this approval to come to Alabama, because like once they find you, then you got to go through the approval process. There's some scrutiny to get into that Malmore Athletic Complex in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So finally I had the chance to come there, and I'll never forget, I'm sitting in Coach Cochran's office, and I say this very humbly. This is not to impress anybody. By the time I got to Alabama in 2017, I had already won national championships with North Dakota State, different level of football. I'd worked with Super Bowl champions. I'd partied on the fields with the Patriots in 2014, partied at the team hotel, been working with corporations, had massive success with books and speaking. But I learned a lesson that day that didn't just apply to what I'm about to share with you that Coach Cochran shared with me, which changed how I connected when I stepped in front of teams. Coach Cochran looks at me and he says, before I take you, because he broke me up, I would watch lifts, and then he broke me up into small groups because he knew in small groups, you're going to have a stronger connection before I ever have you do a team talk. So he breaks me up into these small groups and he says, brother, I got something I need to tell you. These kids don't care about what you've already won. They don't care you shared the stage with Ray Lewis. They don't care you shared the stage with Jared. They don't care about all that because these guys are special too. What these guys care about is that you care about them. So, man, you need to go tell them who you are. And within the first 5 minutes, I'm telling them about my mom. I'm telling them about my dad. I'm giving them my heart. I'm opening up to them. I call that your burn. We all have a burn. And I was encouraging them to connect to the burn that lied inside of them, which is where I find my fight to never waste a day, which I think was the real connection point for Coach Cochran and I, which I believe is probably what kept me in Alabama as long as I stayed, because Coach Cochran could also tell you sometimes they bring a speaker in and they throw you out before you even get 2 sentences out of your mouth. Correct. So I was able to stay there a long period of time because he taught me immediately, man, we're all just real here. So you don't need to impress anybody with anything. Just tell them who you are and encourage them to let you into their lives. And it was like one of these profound lessons that like I've carried with me forever. That's why I say to Coach Cochran, I don't even know if he understands the depth when I say it to him of how much I feel indebted to him for a lot of things I've been able to break through professionally, not just because I have Alabama on my resume, but because of things that he taught me. And that's one of those lessons where you don't need to go impress people with the stuff that you've done. You got to just keep giving people your heart. And that's what I knew he did with those players. And then when he encouraged me to step in that way, that, Jeff, I believe for anybody listening, which really ties back to me being authentic and completely open with all of you. If we can't go here, how are we ever going to have a conversation about you wanting to be your best on the practice field, or you're having problems with your mom and dad, or your girlfriend's bothering you, or a teacher's giving you trouble? They're never going to open up with you if you don't open up with them. And they're just valuable lessons that I learned from Coach Cochran that are so different than what I think people think actually went on in that Malmore Athletic Complex to what I now learned was the real heartbeat of that program. And that's what made that place special. And man, as much as people would see Coach Cochran, yeah, and Saban throwing, headsets, people, I don't think to this day even understand the love and relationships that poured through that building.
No doubt.
Wow.
And I love when you talk about that stuff because I like
wow.
on the back.
Wow. Coach, what you got, Coach?
No, I'm going to take it to a different spot now because I love this story because you've talked to me about it a few times. Is what were you doing when you first got out of college? Were you finance?
I was a paper broker for a short period of time for a few years. And then I went in and I was a financial advisor. So I was helping people. It was life insurance. And what's interesting, I was once again, I try to hold back from these things. I'm not trying to sit here and impress people, but I was in the top 1% of financial advisors in the world. I mean, when I went to the managing partner and said, hey man, I'm leaving because God's opened up these other doors for me, he's putting paperwork in front of me like, hey man, like, do you know the amount of vested income because of renewals in that business you're walking away from? Like, are you seriously leaving? And I think people get caught up sometimes for the money and for the wrong reasons, rather than saying, man, if I've endured pain, I can walk through those doors. If I've got challenge, I can walk through those doors. Maybe this chapter I'm in is not the final chapter. And so I think all of us, especially when we're in those dark places of pain, or somebody going through recovery that might really go to those deep, dark places of questioning, the ebbs and flows of why me? Can I actually make it through this? Will I ever be successful again? No matter the pain that I've been through, I've always felt like I had to go through this to build the real strength to go become who I'm destined to becoming. And so I think everybody listening, you're reading a chapter of your life, and some of you are really fired up and excited about it right now. Some of you might be questioning it. Everybody's exactly where you're supposed to be, pain and great things that happen. But I think you've got to continue to step into it, even through success or through pain, and realize that there are better days ahead if you're willing to constantly work on you and get help if you need help like this, or surround yourself. When that was a great period of time in my life, stepping into a new chapter to where there were people who believed in me, my business coaches and my mentors, who were like, go do it, go speak, go write, go do, just leave, forget about the money. And I just think it's important that, yes, money is important, but that you do things for the right reasons in life, and everything will work out for you in the end. I firmly believe that.
No doubt, 100%. I will stand on all 10 toes on that all day. But I want to know, what was the deciding factor to leave the money? And because that is some scary stuff. And there might be some people listening right now that obviously are really battling what their future looks like. And it could be, about to start a brand new book, might start a brand new chapter in their book. What was the final straw, or was there an aha moment? Because it's not like you walked out and you were, about to do a speaking engagement that was going to pay you a fifth, a tenth of what you're making now. What was that aha moment, or what was that calling like?
So I can tell you, it goes back to 2010, and it's amazing how powerful words keep coming back in your life. So if everybody was listening earlier, I said every day I write down the word surrender, and then I speak to the little boy in me. In 2010, I was having a conversation with one of my coaches. I still have 2 business coaches to this day and mentors. I'm reading books every day. We are never finished. If we think we're finished, we could never help anybody. And so one of my coaches at the time was a woman named Laura Piers. This is going to blow people away. Laura Piers is still one of my 2 coaches. This woman's been coaching me for over 20 years. And in 2010, I remember calling her. We were just having a regular coaching session. I'm building 2 businesses. I had this very robust financial services firm, and I was speaking and coaching, had not done anything in sports yet, not a single talk in sports. It was all in the business world. And I was growing that business. And she said to me something along the lines of, you think you'd ever leave? Like, what is the future? I said, oh, no. I'll always be 50-50. I love both. This is great. And she said to me, why are you trying to control something that's completely out of your control? What if you woke up every day and said, dear God, I surrender to what your plan is, and whatever doors he opens, you decide to walk through them. And every day I started waking up saying, dear God, I surrender. And within 2 years, 100% of my time was speaking, writing, and coaching. And my first opportunity in sports had opened up. It was my old high school basketball coach, Coach Todd Basler. He's characters in books that I've written. I was texting with him this morning, one of the greatest mentors in my life to this day. I played basketball for this man 30 years ago. And he called me in 2011 and said, Benny boy, come fire up these troops, man. They're underperforming. Man, I'm at home. I got 2 little kids. I'm like, man, I'm going to go fire up these high school basketball players. And I said, yes, for no money, but because of my heart. And so many of these things started happening, Jeff and Coach, that like you realize, okay, this isn't about money. This is about passion. And so that happened while I'm surrendering every day, right? And then a few more opportunities open up. And then and I just started realizing, man, God has spoken, because then 100% of my time was speaking, writing, and coaching. And I said, I'm going through those doors with the belief that it is all going to work out. But once again, that same word, surrender, that is what helped me then, which is a word. I mean, I would say it every now and again, but until I started journaling that, I mean, it came all the way back to give me that strength again. I had to start surrendering again.
Coach, can I say, Tim, when you say the word surrender, I made that note earlier. I mean, right on this little notepad. The other word I wrote was God. You use those 2 words quite a bit. Well, there was this man, Doug Brush is his name, that was the head of the men's program, and he would tell the guys at MAR, all he would say to us the first couple of days was, "You need to surrender. You need to surrender." I mean, all day long, he'd just kind of walk down the hall. "You need to surrender." Well, what does that mean? I didn't know what it meant. Now, 8 years later, I've talked to him about what it meant, and I believe I know, but surrendering to God's will, if you're a person of faith, if you're a Christian, the Christian God, Jesus Christ, whatever your higher power is or whatever your faith is, and then surrendering within the disease. How do you match those two up?
Right. So I'm gonna make a loud statement. Ego is a monster. Ego is a monster. And ego can be one of the most powerful things if you don't surrender. And I think when you listen, which to me is beautiful, the manner in which Coach Cochran has always been open with players and building relationships, but his level of openness that I'm seeing in videos and conversations that we've had, that's silencing of the whisper. It's also, he had to make a choice to silence the monster inside of him, which provided this ego, which is, man, I could pop as many pills as I want because I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and you almost forget about God. And so when we hear him say, "I'm now meditating and I'm doing the rosary," and you're doing these things, this is a man who everybody, I mean, there are commercials, the bank commercial. I mean, it was like, you're seeing him on TV, you're seeing him run up and down the sidelines. Like, this is a man who literally could have continued to do it, and maybe people wouldn't have known, but he literally said, "I will silence this monster of this ego." And at some point in time, we got to say, I can't do this by myself. And those are the times in my life, if I've tried to take control, in the Bible, it talks about making sure that we don't idolize things, we don't idolize people, that we idolize God. And so it's important that ego will become a monster if we idolize the wrong things, and we need to idolize the words and the strength that God gives us. One of my favorite Bible verses is James 1:12. "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." That takes a surrender to ever understand what that crown can ever be. That's not saying this is all on me, I do everything. That's saying I need to go through the challenge. I need to go through the obstacles. I have to silence that monster of this ego. And I'm sure Coach Cochran can attest to this. When you're in the game of football, he's been longer than me, but I've been in collegiate football since 2013 now. You meet a lot of coaches, and you meet them within 5 minutes, and you're like, "Oh, this guy's never going to win the way he could." Man, that ego is a monster. And you kind of go on about your way, because I ain't working for that program, but it's not my job to tell that guy. But you meet him, and then you meet some of the ones, and you realize, like, it isn't about ego, it's about serving men to make them better men. And then some people may throw darts at us like, "Oh, they only care about winning." You have no idea, because the egos have been checked, the monsters have been silenced, and things are being done for the right reasons.
Oh, there it is. Mic drop. Yeah, ego to me is edging God out. It's edging God out. And what I've found in my recovery is that my God was drugs, my God was myself, my God was my championship rings, was the players, and it just left me empty. That once I put God in his rightful place, as my savior, and made him first, man, it's amazing the miracles that just keep happening over and over and over again. And with that, I'm going to end it. And Ben, thank you for your time, man. This has been better than I dreamed, because I didn't know how we would go.
Hey,
and
Coach, I'm gonna call a timeout, Coach.
Yeah, you got to close us out.
No, we're not gonna close out, Coach. I'm gonna call timeout.
Yeah,
we said early on we're gonna talk about book 9. Ben, tell us about this book you got coming out, and tell us, is there a website where people can go to other books?
I can't even release so the last book I wrote was called The Standard.
Yep.
And all I will test, I'm a big believer in these 3 words: attack the process. I believe that it's not enough to trust the process. You have to trust the process. That's important. but you must attack the process. And that comes for anything in life. We want to win football games. We can't trust the process. We have to attack the process. You want to fight and overcome the disease of addiction. You can't just trust the process. You must attack the process one day at a time. So I will share with you, the book probably has some relation to the importance of process.
So we're looking for a new book by Ben Newman coming out. He's got 8 books out. Ben, do you have a website?
Yeah, bennewman.net is the main website. And then one of the things that people have really leaned into that I held back from doing for a long time, not that I didn't want to do it, it was the time. I do a lot of work behind the scenes developing coaches and leaders. I mean, I write press conferences for head coaches and you watch them on TV and people never even know most of the work I actually do. And so now through thecoachtocoaches.com, we're really helping leaders and coaches elevate and learn to do things the right way. A lot of these elements we're talking about, it's that love, it's that relationship, it's that heavy communication, it's understanding we have to be an example and having that belief and strength with God. So there's people have loved that program, and it's a way for me to continue to help people behind the scenes, which is what I love. A lot of times they see me in front of the camera. I love being behind.
No, I love it. We'll check both those sites out. Okay, Coach, that was my time out. Back to you.
No, I'm good. You can find us, American Addiction Recovery Association, at eliminatethewhisper.org. Come check us out. We're doing some great things. And thanks again, Ben, for being on today.
Coach Cochran, I love you. I'd do anything for you. And Jeff, I appreciate you and all your amazing work.
Thanks, Ben. What do we say, guys? Recovery
is real.
Real.
It's time to end the whisper. So many suffer in silence. I might not save them all, no, but I'ma die trying. It's time to end the whisper. Never thought in my life it would happen to me, but it did. And now I'm the voice for recovery.